You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Risk management strategies are the structured responses organizations use to handle risks identified through assessments and analysis. At the heart of these strategies are four basic responses: avoid, accept, mitigate, and transfer. Avoidance means eliminating the activity that introduces the risk altogether, such as discontinuing an insecure business process. Acceptance involves recognizing the risk and consciously deciding to live with it. Mitigation reduces the likelihood or impact of the risk through controls, while transfer shifts responsibility to a third party, such as through insurance. Each option is appropriate in different circumstances, and choosing the right one requires balancing costs, feasibility, and business objectives. Mitigation is perhaps the most familiar strategy because it involves active steps to reduce risk exposure. Technical controls such as firewalls, encryption, or access restrictions directly strengthen defenses. Process changes, like requiring two-person approval for sensitive transactions, improve oversight. Behavior-based controls, such as staff training to spot phishing attempts, reduce the human element of risk. The goal of mitigation is not always to eliminate risk entirely, which is rarely possible, but to reduce it to an acceptable level. For example, enforcing multi-factor authentication does not make account compromise impossible, but makes it far less likely and less damaging. Transferring risk involves shifting the potential burden of a loss to another party. This is often done through insurance policies that cover costs associated with cyber incidents, natural disasters, or financial fraud. Transfer can also occur contractually through indemnification clauses or outsourcing agreements where vendors assume certain liabilities. Service-level agreements, SLAs, formalize expectations, ensuring that outsourced services carry enforceable obligations. Transfer does not eliminate risk, but ensures that when it materializes, another entity absorbs the impact. For example, cyber insurance may cover recovery expenses after a ransomware attack, reducing financial fallout for the organization. Avoidance is the most drastic response and means ceasing the risky activity altogether. This option is chosen when a risk's potential harm outweighs any benefit from the activity. For instance, if a company cannot secure an outdated legacy system that poses serious exposure, it might retire the system rather than continue patching it piecemeal. Avoidance can feel extreme, but is often the safest choice when mitigation or transfer are impractical. It requires organizations to evaluate whether the business value of an activity justifies the ongoing risk, sometimes leading to tough but necessary decisions about what not to do. Acceptance may sound passive, but in fact it is a deliberate, strategic choice. Organizations accept risks when they determine the cost of mitigation or transfer exceeds the potential loss, or when the risk is low enough to tolerate. However, acceptance should not be blind. Documenting compensating controls, such as additional monitoring or contingency planning, provides reassurance that the risk is not ignored but watched closely. For example, a company may accept the risk of using a non-critical system that is vulnerable but isolated, while requiring logging and periodic reviews. This ensures acceptance remains intentional and defensible. Different types of risks require different portfolio approaches. High-volume, low-impact risks, such as minor phishing attempts or routine malware detections, can be managed with automated responses or accepted within defined tolerance bands. Low-volume, high-impact risks, like a data breach or catastrophic outage, require more robust mitigation or transfer. By categorizing risks this way, organizations avoid over-investing in trivial issues, while ensuring sufficient resources address severe threats. This portfolio mindset balances efficiency with resilience, ensuring that effort is distributed proportionately rather than spread evenly across all risks. A layered controls strategy, often called defense in depth, is a classic approach to mitigation. Instead of relying on a single safeguard, multiple overlapping defenses are applied to reduce both likelihood and impact. For example, protecting sensitive data might involve encryption, network segmentation, multi-factor authentication, and continuous monitoring. Even if one control fails, others stand in the way of an attack succeeding. This mirrors physical security in everyday life. A house may have a lock, an alarm system, and a guard dog. Defense in depth acknowledges that no control is perfect, but together they significantly improve resilience. Cost-benefit framing is essential in deciding which strategies to pursue. Every mitigation effort has a cost, whether in money, time, or complexity. Organizations must ask whether the marginal reduction in risk justifies the expense. For example, investing millions to reduce a risk that could only cause tens of thousands in losses is not sensible. Conversely, failing to invest in controls against billion-dollar risks is reckless. This framing ensures that resources are used wisely, aligning security investments with real business stakes. It transforms risk management from a compliance exercise into a value-driven decision process. Residual risk management recognizes that even after treatment, some risk always remains. Controls can reduce likelihood and impact, but rarely eliminate them entirely. Continuous monitoring ensures that residual risks are tracked and reassessed when conditions change. Trigger points, such as an increase in threat activity or evidence of control failure, may prompt reevaluation. For instance, a company that accepted a certain level of phishing exposure may revisit the decision after seeing a surge in sophisticated campaigns. Residual risk management ensures that treatment strategies remain effective and relevant over time. Cross-functional strategies leverage multiple perspectives and tools to reduce risk more effectively. Legal teams can negotiate contract clauses that shift liability. Procurement can require vendors to meet strict security standards. Technical teams can implement controls that enforce these requirements. By working together, these functions create a stronger, multi-layered strategy than any could achieve alone. For example, a company outsourcing payroll might use procurement to vet the vendor, legal to craft protective terms, and IT to monitor secure connections. Cross-functional approaches acknowledge that managing risk is not solely a security issue but an enterprise-wide responsibility. Governance provides the oversight needed to ensure strategies are applied consistently and responsibly. Approval gates require senior leaders to authorize decisions such as accepting high risks or purchasing expensive insurance policies. Documentation is also vital, providing evidence that risks were not ignored but managed according to policy. For example, a decision to transfer risk through cyber insurance should include documented review of policy coverage and exclusions. Governance ensures accountability, preventing ad hoc or undocumented decisions that could undermine the integrity of the risk management program. A practical starter exercise helps solidify these ideas. Choose one top risk from your register, say, unpatched internet-facing servers. Draft a short strategy memo outlining a recommended response. Perhaps the choice is mitigation through an automated patching solution, with transfer considered through cyber insurance for breach costs. Estimate the cost of implementing the patching system, assign ownership to the IT infrastructure lead, and propose a timeline for completion within 60 days. This exercise connects theory to practice, showing how strategic responses translate into actionable, accountable plans. Through this exercise, learners see that risk strategies are not abstract categories, but living decisions that must be documented, costed, and assigned. Choosing whether to avoid, accept, mitigate, or transfer a risk is a matter of balancing organizational priorities with available resources. By practicing with specific examples, organizations strengthen their ability to respond consistently and effectively. Risk strategies become a structured part of planning rather than reactive decisions made under pressure. This maturity enhances both resilience and trust in the organization's governance processes. By the end of Part 1, it becomes clear that risk management strategies are a toolkit of responses. Each has strengths, limitations, and appropriate contexts. The art lies in choosing the right one for the right situation, documenting it clearly, and following through with accountability. Whether it is avoiding a legacy system, mitigating through layered controls, transferring through insurance, or accepting with monitoring, strategies empower organizations to act deliberately rather than by chance. In Part 2, we will explore how to prioritize strategies, measure their success, and adjust them continuously as conditions evolve. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Prioritizing strategies begins with evaluating business impact, exploitability, and available budget. A risk that could cause millions in losses and is easily exploitable deserves top priority for mitigation or transfer, even if addressing it is expensive. On the other hand, a risk with minimal impact or very low likelihood may be acceptable to leave as is. Budget also plays a major role. Organizations cannot eliminate every risk, so they must allocate resources where they will deliver the greatest value. By ranking risks based on these factors, leaders ensure that scarce resources are focused on protecting what truly matters most. Sometimes primary mitigation measures are impractical or take too long to implement, so organizations use compensating controls. These are alternate safeguards that reduce risk until stronger solutions can be deployed. For example, if a critical application cannot be patched immediately, access might be restricted through tighter firewall rules or enhanced monitoring. Compensating controls are not permanent fixes but temporary risk reducers that buy time. They demonstrate that while a vulnerability exists, the organization is not ignoring it. By layering compensating measures, teams reduce exposure until a long-term remediation can be completed effectively. Hybrid strategies combine elements of mitigation, transfer, acceptance, and avoidance. For instance, an organization may mitigate a vulnerability by applying technical controls, but still purchase insurance to cover any residual losses. This dual approach acknowledges that no single strategy is perfect. Another example is partially avoiding a risky service by limiting its use while mitigating what remains. Hybrid strategies allow for flexibility and balance, especially in complex environments where risks cannot be fully addressed by one method. They provide resilience by spreading defenses across multiple strategies rather than relying on a single response. Supplier risk strategies are increasingly critical in today's interconnected ecosystems. Organizations depend on vendors, contractors, and cloud providers, all of whom can introduce risks. To manage these, contracts should include strong clauses that set clear security expectations. Service-level agreements define performance metrics, while audit rights allow organizations to verify compliance. Vendor scorecards track ongoing performance, highlighting areas of strength and weakness. For example, a vendor failing patch compliance may face penalties or lose renewal opportunities. By weaving risk considerations into supplier relationships, organizations extend their risk management practices beyond their own walls to include third parties. Risk financing provides another dimension of strategy, particularly relevant to cyber incidents. Insurance policies can be tailored with limits, deductibles, and coverage types to balance affordability with protection. A policy might cover incident response costs, regulatory fines, or even business interruption. Deductibles ensure the organization shares some responsibility, keeping premiums manageable. However, risk financing must be carefully reviewed to ensure coverage matches realistic scenarios. For example, some policies exclude ransomware payments, which could leave an organization vulnerable. When used effectively, risk financing provides financial resilience, ensuring that the organization can absorb shocks without crippling losses. Measurable success criteria are essential to evaluate whether strategies are working. Success might be defined as a reduction in a key risk indicator, such as lowering the percentage of unpatched systems from 15% to below 2%. It could also mean complete removal of a vulnerability, such as retiring an insecure legacy application. For transfer strategies, success might be measured by insurance payout limits sufficient to cover likely damages. Without defined success metrics, strategies risk becoming vague promises rather than accountable actions. Measurable outcomes transform strategies into tangible improvements that can be tracked and reported. Governance also plays a role in reevaluating strategies over time. A risk that was once accepted may need mitigation if conditions change. For example, a minor vulnerability might become critical if attackers release an exploit. Periodic reviews ensure that acceptance does not become complacency. Governance bodies can also re-examine the cost-benefit balance as new technologies or budget shifts emerge. These re-evaluations prevent risk strategies from becoming outdated, ensuring they remain aligned with both the evolving threat landscape and the organization's current capabilities. Continuous oversight keeps risk treatment decisions fresh and relevant. Communicating strategy options effectively is vital for executive decision-making. Templates help present choices clearly, laying out the trade-offs of mitigation, transfer, avoidance, or acceptance. Each option should highlight expected costs, likely benefits, and residual risks. For example, a communication might outline the choice between spending $200,000 on new intrusion detection or accepting the risk of a potential $1 million data breach. By framing decisions this way, executives can weigh options rationally, balancing risk appetite with financial reality. Clear communication ensures that leaders make informed choices backed by evidence rather than intuition alone. For large systemic changes, pilot implementations are a valuable tool. Pilots allow organizations to test a new strategy on a smaller scale before committing fully. For example, introducing a new identity management system might first be piloted within one department. If successful, it can be rolled out more broadly. Pilots validate assumptions, uncover hidden challenges, and provide proof of concept. This staged approach reduces risk, ensures smoother adoption, and allows refinements before large investments are made. By piloting, organizations avoid committing prematurely to untested strategies that may fail at scale. Documenting leftover risks and monitoring plans is critical when acceptance is chosen. Acceptance should never mean ignoring a risk entirely. Instead, it should be conditional, with clear monitoring in place to detect changes. For example, a company may accept the risk of not encrypting a low-sensitivity archive, but require quarterly reviews to ensure that the data remains non-critical. This documentation ensures transparency and provides evidence to regulators, auditors, or executives that acceptance was deliberate, reviewed, and coupled with oversight. In this way, acceptance becomes a living decision rather than a forgotten one. Continuous feedback loops tie strategy back to real-world outcomes. Incidents and near misses provide data that should inform future risk treatment. If a phishing attack bypasses existing controls, it may prompt stronger mitigations, updated insurance policies, or new training programs. These feedback loops ensure that strategies evolve dynamically, closing the gap between planning and reality. They also promote a culture of learning, where mistakes or surprises are seen as opportunities to refine defenses. By continuously feeding lessons back into strategy, organizations avoid repeating errors and strengthen resilience over time. Ultimately, the selection of risk management strategies should be explicit, business-aligned, and measurable. Organizations should never stumble into acceptance or rely on vague notions of mitigation. Instead, each risk should be evaluated, assigned a deliberate strategy, and tracked against defined success metrics. For example, a company might decide to mitigate phishing through training and email filtering, transfer residual risk through insurance, and review results quarterly. By making strategies intentional and transparent, organizations ensure accountability and alignment with business goals. This deliberate approach transforms risk management from theory into practice. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.